What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic. And Disney had previously stated they were bringing forward a new show at Disneyland that was going to feature a lifelike Walt Disney animatronic that was going to use his own voice and his mannerisms. And this was met with some controversy, as you did have Walt Disney's granddaughter pushing back against this, saying it was against her mother's wishes, and even claiming that her grandfather, Walt Disney himself, had actually said he never wanted to be an animatronic. But there are other family members that were okay with this, so it has moved forward and is getting ready to premiere, and Disney has given a first look at this new animatronic. So we're going to take a look at what this looks like. We're going to watch it and see how it sounds and see what we think about this. I'm very curious what everybody else thinks about this, because I do think this is going to be rather mixed opinions. But we're going to read through this article from Blog Mickey and talk about it here. So its first look, Walt Disney audio animatronic is coming to Disneyland. Disneyland has shared a first look at the Walt Disney audio animatronic coming to Disneyland this week. This all-new audio animatronic in the first ever Walt Disney audio animatronic, and it will debut to the public on July 17th as part of the Walt Disney A Magical Life. It's going to make its debut at the Main Street Opera House Theater at Disneyland, again this Thursday, July 17th. Our Imagineering team is putting the finishing touches on the show and attraction and the realization of many years of passion and planning. The 70th anniversary of Disneyland Park offered us a great opportunity to remind guests of Walt Disney's incredible story, told in his own words, in both film and through the magic of audio animatronics, the art that he pioneered. After exploring the lobby exhibits, you'll step into the theater to view Walt Disney A Magical Life, and the show begins with a film adaptation of One Man's Dream, narrated by Walt himself, which follows his life from early endeavors through his dreams for the future. The finale of the show will raise the curtain on the first audio animatronics figure of Walt Disney ever created, and guests will discover him in a recreation of his office at the studio, where he'll share a few stories and thoughts on his career and philosophy. Taken from recordings spanning decades, Walt's words were seamlessly blended to create these great moments for the performance. I think what's interesting about that wording there, and when we hear the animatronic, it may make sense, but it says blended. I believe if you look at some of the stuff that Disney's saying, I think they use a little bit of AI in here to get this voice kind of the way they did, but we'll hear about it. But I think that part I kind of found interesting. So we got a few clips we'll check out of the animatronic.
You know, I was stumped one day when the little boy asked, "Do you draw Mickey Mouse?" And I had to admit I do not draw anymore. Well, then you think of all the jokes and ideas. No, I said, I don't do that. Finally, he looked at me and said, "Mr. Disney, just what do you do?" Well, I said, sometimes I think of myself as a little bee. I go from one area of the studio to another and gather pollen and sort of stimulate everybody.
You know, I was kind of back and forth on what I thought about this from different perspectives. But when you look at these side by side, I think that's when you really get to the realization and like, that doesn't look like Walt. Like, if it's me running the show here, and as important of a figure Walt Disney is, or should be, I'll put it that way, to the Disney company, I feel like you need to make this as great as you can to, honor him. I feel like this is a rough draft. You can see kind of the similarities, but it just doesn't look like him. And I don't know if this comes down to not having people in Imagineering that have really done, working on faces like this. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. I can tell you right now, like, I'm not going to act like it's an easy thing to pull off. Drawing faces and carving faces and sculpting them, making animatronics of them is not an easy task. But as important as this should be to the Disney company, I just think you go back and you refine this a bit. And you can have the best intentions in the world of wanting to honor him and have this animatronic with him, but I think the first reaction, the first impression of this needs to be, you need to look at it and just be blown away. Like, wow, that looks like Walt. And that is not the case. And you're even seeing a lot of very pro-Disney accounts online that are being pretty critical of this. I think the best way to describe it, at least to me, is it's like an animatronic of somebody that's impersonating Walt. So you're like 2 or 3 sources removed, where you've got some of the similarities. Like, if he shows up at the birthday party as Walt Disney, you're like, oh, okay, I can see that. But when you're advertising this as Walt Disney is an animatronic, and it's like you're going to be able to be there as if when Walt was alive, I don't think this hits that mark. Like the audio stuff, like I think it sounds pretty good. I think it may sound weird, but if you think about Walt's video recordings or any of his recordings of his voice, that was like obviously dated and it's scratchy and they don't have the microphone technology that you have today. So they're trying to make that sound like it would, I suppose, today. So I'm sure they probably use some AI with that. Actually, I think Disney has said they used AI with that. The animatronic itself's not too bad. I mean, it moves, it kind of leans on the table, gets up and down. It has his mannerisms a little bit. Like the movements of it aren't too bad. It's just, it's much bigger than what he was. The facial structure is all off. And it's just very uncanny valley. Like, some people may not be able to put their finger on exactly what it is, but it just doesn't quite look right. I kind of think that's where I sit on this. This isn't the worst thing I've ever seen in terms of an animatronic. I don't think anything is as bad as the first President Trump iteration they had in the Hall of Presidents. As, like him or not like him, that was a horrible animatronic that looked nothing like him. They have improved that one over the last few iterations of it. So I suppose this could get better, but it's probably just going to depend on where people's expectations are for this. If they were expecting this to look like an actual like Walt Disney walking on stage or coming back to life, I suppose they're going to be in for a rude awakening here. If you're kind of expecting this to have, some similarities to Walt, but not actually look a lot like him, obviously I think you'll probably be right in line with that. But I also think that if you're talking about a Walt Disney animatronic, the level of that, the bar needs to be higher than just like, well, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Like you want this thing to wow people. I just don't think it's going to wow people. And that's unfortunate because I think if you're going to take a big swing and do a Walt Disney animatronic, you need to have some pretty high expectations. And I don't think it hits that. I've always felt this has the potential in terms of your high end plus and your downside of this. I've always felt like the high end, like best case scenario of this is people saying, okay, that kind of sounds like, well, that's kind of cool. I just don't think you're capable of making an animatronic that literally looks like him, which is the danger in doing this because it's like some of the Walt family members, when you have all this footage of Walt, what is a audio animatronic going to be able to convey that Walt himself on video can't? Part of the reason they did Lincoln, the Lincoln animatronic was there's really no video footage of Lincoln talking or seeing him. So you're bringing a historical figure kind of come to life that people haven't heard before or really have seen talk. Like we've seen Walt talk. There's video footage of him talking. I feel like having an animatronic say his words, it just seems off and weird, but it just doesn't look right. I think this falls really in line with that. I'm really curious what people are going to say about this, what you guys think in the comments and just in general. I think it could be all over the place, but I seemingly, at least on Twitter, actually, have seen a lot more people be pretty critical of this, and I think the criticisms are valid. I think, especially when you look at this right here side by side. But yeah, either way, this is going to premiere at Disneyland this Thursday. And I guess we'll see at that point what people think about it once it's actually live and how that goes. But I think it would be wise to update this, refine this, and maybe they can get it to a point where it looks much closer to the image on the left here. So if it was me, I'd say go back to the drawing board and make this better and delay this. I think that would go over much better. Either way, that's going to be it, though, for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do all this coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about the Walt Disney animatronic, and do you think it looks anything like him? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.